and one. Well, good morning and welcome to the second panel session where we are discussing discipleship and how it is linked to church leadership. I have a panel of experts amongst us today, and we're thankful for your attendance. And so, as a church, we want to improve our processes and our procedures, and to do that, we have to apply biblical standards. And so, today we're going to talk specifically about 1 Timothy 3, qualifications of a deacon, and how it also is, and how also that impacts the spouse of the deacon. So we're just glad that you're here today. And so if we could, why don't we just introduce our panelists today? Brother Todd, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Todd Trimble, and I'm a Christian, first of all. I'm also a deacon and a trustee, and I work at Horatio State Bank. I'm a banker.
Thank you.
My name is James Dobbins, and I am a semi-retired educator. Been at Horatio School District for 41 years, 16 as a high school principal. In this capacity in this church, I'm chairman of deacons and chairman of the finance committee.
I am Rachel Shipp. I'm a business owner and a minister's wife.
I'm Pollyanna Smith. I am the director of the WMU. I have retired from selling insurance, where I worked at Shelter Insurance for 25 years.
I'm Angela Dunn. I am an educator and a children's and youth minister.
All right, thank you for those introductions. I'm just going to read over a couple scriptures. 1 Timothy chapter 3, the Bible gives clear specifications concerning deacons and overseers. And so we're going to begin at verse 8, and it says, "In the same way, deacons must be well respected and have integrity. They must not be heavy drinkers or dishonest with money. They must be committed to the mystery of the faith now revealed and must live with a clear conscience." In verse 10, it says, "Before they are appointed as deacons, let them be closely examined. If they pass the test, then let them serve as deacons." Verse 11 gives specifications concerning deacons' wives. In the same way, their wives must be respected and must not slander others. They must exercise self-control and be faithful in everything they do. A deacon must be faithful to his wife. He must manage his children and household well. Those who do well as deacons will be rewarded with respect from others and will have increased confidence in their faith in Christ Jesus. And of course, that was from the New Living Translation. And so the panelists today, my first question will be directed at James Dobbins. It says in 1 Timothy chapter 3, in relation to qualification of church leader, the Apostle Paul states, if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Why do you believe that that is a essential spiritual principle?
Well, for me, it comes back to the fact that, I'll start with my wife. You're not going to have good followers if you're not going to have good leaders. And you can't expect your children, as they grow up, to be godly and follow the right path if you aren't leading in some way. And I've always been big on leadership. And being a deacon for me, and like I said earlier in my introduction, I was a principal for 16 years. Being a deacon has been harder than doing that job. And if you don't have a wife who is a teammate of you, and I'm not sure if any of the deacons' wives knew what they were getting into before their husbands became deacons. It can be overwhelming. There's misunderstandings, but again, you go back to raising your children, and the wife should be able to look at you for examples of what to do and how to lead a godly life, and it's very important for your children to do that. And most of the times, if that is done, then things turn out pretty well, but it's just extremely important for them to be able to look at you in difficult situations whether it's in the church or whether it's outside the church, and see how you're going to handle things as a godly man. They're going to be with you in times of duress. They're going to see you at your worst. The question is, what are they going to see? What kind of man are they going to see? Are they going to see somebody that loses his temper, that loses control in certain situations? Maybe there's an accident, something happens, but you're constantly being looked at as a deacon once you get in that position. And so it's extremely important for the family to see you as the leader, because nothing's going to happen until you have your act right. And when you get your act right, there's a pretty darn good chance that your family will follow.
Very good. Thank you for that. That was tremendous input. So now I'm going to get a woman's perspective. And so, Sister Ship, I'll direct this to you in how important is the spiritual principle. If a man does not know how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? And of course, your husband is our associate minister here. Could you add anything to that, sister?
Well, I feel, as wives, we're supposed to submit to our husbands, and that isn't an easy task. However, when your husband loves you like Christ loves the church, it is easy, and you learn to rest in him. There are things that we as women are not meant to worry about, or burdens that we are not supposed to have to bear. That is what God gave us our husband for. And when he loves you like Christ loves the church, then you learn to rest in him, and you submit to him because you know that he has your best interest and your children's best interest at heart. And you just pray for him and let him make those decisions. And it's actually a relief once you learn how to do it. And we all trust him. I do, our children do, because of the example that he has set and who he is as a person. And so, I feel like Eric has always said his first ministry is his family. And I believe that, God calls you, he gives you those children. They are a gift from him, and you have to be in control of your household. You have to teach your children a reverent fear of you, so that they have a reverent fear of authority and God, ultimately. So I feel that it is extremely important that a man is in control of his household before he is a leader of a church, because that's his first ministry, and you don't need to go past that before you get to a church if you can't control it.
Outstanding answer, Sister Ship. Very well. We're going to move to our second question. And in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 12, concerning qualifications of a deacon, it clearly talks about the spouse of a deacon. And so, actually, this is 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 11. It says, even so must their wives, deacons' wives, leaders' wives, be grave, not slanderers, sober, faithful in all things. Brother Todd, why is the wife considered when selecting a deacon?
Well, just speaking from myself, when I first became a Christian, I didn't have any clue of what that really meant, other than to follow Jesus. And so we met in college, and we dated, and we would go on coat dates, and when we would go to church together, we'd go to Sunday morning, Sunday night, and then on Wednesday night, and I noticed on Sunday morning when the offering plate went around, my wife Liz started, she was giving money, and I knew that we were not, I didn't have much money to give. I know I didn't, and so I was like, well, that's interesting, and I didn't, I knew that the church had to operate somehow, but I didn't have any clue that that's what we should be doing, and so fast forward 47 years later, we grow together, and some people, they think about giving, they think about 10% giving. Then some people think about net versus gross giving, and again, this is just one aspect. And so as time went on, I started really being compelled to give gross instead of net. That was a hard thing for me, and some people it would not be, but it was for me. But anyways, but it was through my wife, her the way she was brought up in the church. I wasn't, and she had that ingrained in her of how the importance of giving, and that God will he gives back. It's amazing and how that happens. But yeah, I mean that's just one aspect. But I think that it's really important for a man to have a wife that's supportive and that's godly and wants to serve, be a servant as well. And we've served in the church for, like I said, the last 47 years in different capacities.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move to Pollyanna, or Sister Pollyanna. I know that you have been involved in church governance for some time. For you, the wife of a deacon, why do you believe that we should consider the wife of a deacon before we ordain a deacon?
Well, a deacon is someone within your church that should receive your utmost respect. If that deacon is not a respected member of your community, he shouldn't be a deacon to begin with. Likewise, his wife should be the same. If she has the type of reputation that people see her just as a compliment to that deacon, an extension of him, because if you've ever watched them, it's not a one-man job. It's a family job, and they all give in to it. She also has to be someone who is a doer and a studier of the Word. She has to be someone that you recognize as being a prayer warrior. And I think when we see that, we see the perfect deacon's wife, and I think that has to go with the deacon.
Thank you for that outstanding response. There has been one principle concerning deacons that we have had often, and in 1 Timothy 3 it says, "And let those who are going to be appointed as a deacon, first be proved, then let them use the office of the deacon." This is a test period, a trial period. Why do you believe that this is an extremely important principle in God's Word? And James, I'll direct this to you since you're the chairman of the deacons at this particular time.
Well, if I can, I'd like to go back to what Todd was talking about, because our situations were very similar, and the importance of the wife. There was a time, and I was a Christian, and I was deeply involved in the church, but I wasn't walking the path that I needed to walk. And I was here, and Brother Ellison was here, and I was even on a pastor search committee and kind of going through the motions. But I didn't come on Sunday nights, and I don't remember what we did on Wednesdays. And Tony Barre had a discipleship training class. And I remember her walking out, and I was not going to go. I was going to watch Sunday night football. That's what I did. She was going to go. I was going to watch Sunday night football in the pregame and cook my White Castle cheeseburgers and go on my way. And every Sunday night, she would look back and go, "Maybe one of these days you'll go with me." Kind of like you seeing that. That's the importance of that wife that helps to change the man.
Absolutely.
And to your other question is, I don't think deacons are appointed as much as they are recognized. We use the word appointed. Recognize. What is the way that they walk? What is the way that they carry themselves? And maybe I'm kind of off your original question, so you may want to ask it again.
So why do we need to have prospective deacons tested before they are ordained to the role of deacon?
Because if they're not, there's going to be a collapse. There's going to be some issues that come up later that will not only harm the deacon body, but could hurt and damage the whole church. Because I'm telling you guys, unless you've done it, you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Unless you've really done the job, you don't know what it is. And it's nothing that gets out in the community. It's individual relationships with members in the church. It's issues that come up that a lot of people don't know about. And if we as deacons are not able to handle that in the proper way, I mean, you've got a conflict within the church and you're just getting blasted by somebody. You can't revert to the old way. You can't revert back to the James I want to revert back to. You got to shut that mouth, ask God to help you in every way you can, and there's just so many things that come up that surprise you. But that's the world. That's dealing with people.
Yep.
You have to understand that's dealing with people. Every person in the congregation is totally different, and there's so many different issues that come up, and they could just involve anything. So you got to be battle tested. You had to be battle tested. And I was fortunate. Being in the education business, I think, helps. Being a leader as a principal, I took a lot of chewings. I took a lot of conflict was my middle name. I mean, you expect it from the time you get up in the morning to the time you go home. So if a man is not prepared for that, along with his wife, you have to have a chat before we go in. Hey, listen, this is going to be this way. And then, of course, things are a little bit worse than you can ever imagine. And you sit down and you think, hey, this is the way we're going to handle this situation. I know you don't like it. I don't like it either. But we're not going to go with the old way. We got a new way. We got to do this, and this is how it's got to be done. And end of discussion.
Once again, very good, great input with that. Absolutely, Sister Angela. I'm gonna direct the next question toward you, or in your direction. The book of Titus, which is a pastoral epistle, is used in conjunction with 1 Timothy concerning church leadership. The aged women are identified in the book of Titus, and it says this: the aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. I know there's a whole lot to unpack there. How important are these specifications concerning the aged women in the local church?
I feel like this question goes with question 1, 2, and 3 as well. Mainly because women are influential to men and to their children. And so if an ungodly woman is within the home, then you're going to have ungodly children. And even if the man was godly to the start, he can be swayed. There are many instances in the Bible where women were negatively influential towards men and caused them to fall back. From the very beginning, we have Adam and Eve. And then also, if we're teaching the children the things that are not true or not biblical, then we're putting them out into the world and only creating more chaos. So I feel like that women, we have more of a role than what we feel like we have, because I know we are to submit to our husband, and with that there is peace, but we also have to submit to God, to his spiritual control of our lives, because we do have influence in the homes, in the church, in the world.
Wonderful answer, Sister Angela. So I'm going to go back to you, Sister Ship, because this is kind of the direction you were going when we were talking about question number 1. Would you add anything to Sister Angela concerning the aged women and how important they are as role models in the church?
Have y'all ever met a woman that talks about everybody? You know, and everybody knows who she is, and she goes around and she talks about this one, then she goes and talks about this one, and being on staff in a church makes you see a whole new side of things that you never know exist just as a member. And it is hard sometimes to keep your mouth shut, not to have your own opinion, and to take a deep breath. But like Angela said, we as women have a lot of influence. We have a lot of influence. And if someone comes up to you and says, oh, well, this person started coming, and man, they needed to because I saw them at da-da-da-da-da-da, you know, and it's usually women who do those things. It's not usually men. So even the Lord's telling us here, you know, keep your mouth shut. You know, that's not what you're supposed to do. That's not how you're supposed to be. And I feel like that we, like Angela said, we're called to more. We're called to more than a lot of women realize. And we have so much influence over our husbands and our children. And, you know, the Bible even says that if you're a nagging wife, you know, it's better for your husband to go sit on the roof.
Yeah.
You know, you have such a role to be his support and to love him and to love your children. And even in, you know, like Adam and Eve, it says that she will, you know, give birth in pain, and her desire will be for her husband. And we are supposed to love deeply and to love our children, and they are gifts, and God is love, and the greatest of these is love. So we have to show that love to our husband and to our children and to the other people in the church. And we're supposed to take younger girls under our wing and teach them how we're supposed to be, you know, how you're supposed to dress modestly and how you're supposed to present yourself and how you're supposed to love other people, and prepare your heart to love your husband one day. That's our job as older women in the church.
Very good, Sister Ship. There's one question on here that there's one question I'm going to ask that I did not give the panel, and talking to peers within the ministry, within the church setting, how should a church or a leadership team deal with deacons who go absent without leave for long periods of time within the congregation? And I'm going to direct this to you, Brother James, as the chairman, and then I'm going to bring it to Brother Todd. How shall we deal with deacons who are absent without leave for long periods of time in the local congregation? How should we handle that?
Well, first of all, I think it goes back to mercy and grace. And I'm not sure what you mean by a long period of time, but I think every situation is different. So I think we as deacons should be able to go to each other individually. You know, and if it's Todd, what's going on here? And how can we help as a deacon body, and how can the church help? Because I wouldn't think any deacon would go that route if there weren't any particular reason. And to me, the church is there to help. We should be able to see what's going on in somebody's life, whether they be a deacon or not, and see that they may be struggling in some way. You know, I turned to Todd a few weeks ago, and I said, you don't seem to be yourself. Well, I think it's our responsibility to do that with the deacons and try to help in any way we can to see if we can if there's anything we can do that brings us back within the deacon body. And after that, there's going to have to be some choices made to say, listen, are you going to be able to serve or not? Are you able to do the job that needs to be done? And I believe if you hired the right, if you got the right deacon there, that they'll be able to examine themselves and say, you know what, this is not for me. This is not for me, and I'm going to move on and move forward. And we should both they should be thankful that they were recognized, and we should be thankful that they were willing to serve.
I gotcha. Okay. Todd, what would you add to that, brother?
Well, I think, you know, and I've been a deacon now for over 20 years, and, you know, I think it's important first of all, first thing to think about is prayer, and asking the Lord to show us how to deal with, like Brother James said, each individual situation is different. Communication is really important. I think that at first we have to go to God and seek His help to deal with the situation, and then look to see what the Bible says. Mercy and grace is extremely important, and so we should go to the Bible tells us that we should go to our brother and try to find out what's going on and get right, and try to figure out what's happening, and then from there, if you're unable to bring your brother back into the fold, so to speak, then it's important to get two people to go with, at least one or two other people to go with you, preferably your pastor, and then you try to visit with the person, and if that still is unresolved, then you just prayerfully be patient as long as you possibly can, and then at some point you have to move forward. And so at that point, it would be best probably for that deacon to go inactive for a period of time. And then if the deacon prolongs getting back into the fellowship with the church even further, then at some point you may have to ask him to be removed from the deacon body. It's a hard thing.
Yeah. Absolutely,
I
it
wanna
is.
Can I add something there?
Yeah,
He mentioned
absolutely.
something, communication. There's just a lack of it a lot of times. There's just a lack of communication to understand what a situation is. So I think Todd said that word, and I've seen it in my line of work often, and it was brought up almost. I had a teacher now that's retired, and every faculty meeting it was about a lack of communication. And I can either get offended or do better jobs of communicating. And we're no less guilty in these churches. There are a lot of times we don't communicate enough.
Yeah, I agree with that, brother. Pollyanna, let me ask your perspective on that as of a woman elder within the church, and how absence of a deacon for long periods of time, how does that affect the congregation?
Well, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking how one bad apple can ruin the whole bunch. And from the perspective as a church member, if we have a deacon that's a part of that body, and possibly we're focusing on the wrong thing, but that one person and either their attitude or their lack of participation, and sometimes that participation is not just in the deacon body but within the church, that can bring a bad name to the whole bunch, because what people do is they look at it and they think, well, they want to help, and I use the word rule lightly because that's not actually what the deacons do, but for lack of a better word, they want to rule us, but yet they can't fix things within them own selves. Then what happens is people become very unhappy with the deacon body as a whole. And 9 times out of 10, that's not the situation at all. There's one person that has a problem, and that one person has to be dealt with to fix that problem. However, I do believe that has to be just as you would attack the problems with a preacher. Those problems with a deacon have to be done very delicately. I think the men have have examined that, and they have come up with very good principles to do that. But we as church members have to remember that our part is to pray. And we need to be helping those deacons in, whether it's a deacon or a Sunday school teacher, youth minister, a song leader, a preacher. We should all be praying that God will give them the answers that they need.
Absolutely. Those are all wonderful, just wonderful answers. I'm going to take two questions from the audience here. Does anyone have a question for one of our panelists? Would anybody like to ask a question? No questions. They nailed the subject matter today. So I'll tell you what. I have one question, and then we will conclude. And I'm going to Sister Angela. This is going to come to you, and then we will close out from this particular point. The Bible states this: "Follow peace with all men, and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord." Follow peace with all men, and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. What does that verse, how do you interpret that verse? What is God saying to us here?
To me, it means to pursue peace, and in order to pursue peace, we have to forgive those who harm us instead of retaliating or trying to get vengeful. I believe earlier in that passage it referenced how Jesus was, how he hung on the cross, and he didn't retaliate to those who were beating him, spitting on him, mocking him. The entire time that we read through any of the gospel chapters, instead he just asked for forgiveness, not for himself, but for those people. So dealing with children all of the time, a lot of the discipline is, well, he hit me first, or he touched me first, or she poked me first. Well, I just say they hit Jesus first, and he just said, "I forgive you." And they're like, "Oh, yeah." And we're supposed to turn the other cheek. And, when we pray about that and, let that peace just come over us that, hurt people, and I don't want to be that person hurting other people. And so that's what I think that passage means, is to pursue peace, and that means you've got to forgive.
Outstanding answer. Well, does anybody else have a question they would like to ask? If not, we will conclude this portion of our second panel discussion. And I think that the panelists did an outstanding job today. Don't y'all think they did a great job? They certainly did. I mean, great insights, great experience, and we're so thankful that we were allowed to borrow y'all so we could discuss the importance of church leadership and how it connects to discipleship. So I pray after the session that we leave here with more understanding of the gravity and the seriousness of church leadership and how it always hinges on discipleship. So we just thank you for your participation, and we do hope that you will join us for one final panel, panel number 3, and that will take place tonight at 5 p.m. Thank you so much, and have a great day.